Hello there and welcome into another edition of the Booberglawcast. My name is JayMac. I'm so glad that you decided to join us. Today we're going to answer another very important question. What do you do if you've been in a workplace accident? Who do you call? What are your actions supposed to be to protect yourself? As always, we want to welcome in attorney Chris Booberg, who's going to help us answer these questions. Chris, how's everything going?
Everything's good here. Thank you very much for helping me out with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad to do it. I think this is such an important question. As we learned back when we talked about what to do in a car accident, I think that none of us are prepared for these things. It's not something we put any forethought to until it happens. And then I have a feeling we're susceptible to a lot of mistakes. So I'm glad you're here to help us out. So let's talk about this. I've just had a workplace injury. What is the first thing that should go through my mind besides saying, ouch, that really hurt?
The first thing you got to do is get medical attention if you need medical attention. That's an obvious one. And the importance of getting medical attention is that you're creating a record for the future. Not only are you possibly getting care that you need, but you're also telling a medical professional what's going on with you, and they're going to be creating a record of that so that in the future, 4 months, 6 months, a year, possibly when you have a workers' comp hearing, we'll be able to go back to that date, and hopefully it's close to the date of the injury, and that will there'll be a record there of what you told the doctor was bothering you, and hopefully the doctor will say these injuries are related to this accident, so that won't be an issue either. So the first thing to do is to get medical attention if you need it.
So you say if you need it. I mean, what if I have a sore neck or a sore back? I mean, is there a threshold? Would you just say err on the side of caution? What advice would you give on that?
I would always say err on the side of caution, but very importantly, in something like that, like what you're talking about, I've had a couple of unfortunate cases recently where somebody had what appeared to be a relatively minor injury that then became a more serious injury. And the thing that the problem that they had, and that's the next step in what to do after you've been hurt at work, is they had not reported the injury to their employer.
Okay.
And under Virginia law, you've got to report it within 30 days. And if you don't report it within 30 days, you're out of luck.
Wow. So that's important to know. 30 days. You also said, hopefully, when we go back to the record, that there will not be a gap of time between when you were hurt and when you went to the doctor. So that's something the insurance company will look at, right? And say, well, why did you wait a week before you went in? So you want to get in as quickly as possible.
That's exactly right. None of us are doctors, and we don't know exactly what's going on. That's why we have doctors to examine us. And the trouble is that most of us, like these couple of cases that I had recently, you kind of get little nicks and scrapes, and maybe you twist something every day when you're doing hard work. So in both of these cases, it ended up being an ankle. And both clients thought, well, I don't really want to tell my boss about this. It doesn't seem serious. I don't want them to think I'm a whiner or a complainer or that I'm trying to get out of work. But then in both cases, it ended up being something more serious. And they had not made a clear report within 30 days to their supervisor. And both cases were lost, unfortunately, and they had real injuries that they had suffered.
Oh, that's unfortunate. You brought up something that really popped into my mind when I first started thinking about workplace injuries, and that is the concern over the relationship with the employer. Like, I have to think that for many people, there's this, like you expressed it, like, I don't want my boss to think I'm just trying to get out of work or that I'm just trying to get a paycheck. Do you see a lot of that? And what would you say to those people?
I see a lot of people who are worried about that. And from the employer's standpoint, they have an insurance policy for workers' compensation, just like you have a car insurance policy. And everybody knows you don't want to make a claim on your car insurance policy for fear they'll jack up your rates. And the same is true for employers. I have a case now where the employer tried to pay the person, just said, give me your medical bills and I'll give you some cash. And that way we won't have to report it. Well, the problem that you have there is you're not getting all the benefits that you would get if you go through the Virginia workers' compensation system. And you're also relying on the good graces of your employer. Who knows if the employer is going to stand by that? What if it gets more serious after 30 days? What if they just string you along and pay you and seem like they're going to take care of you 30 days, and then they say that you never reported the accident and you don't have anything official that says you reported the accident? So it is a difficult situation, and people are worried that they're going to be fired. It's also difficult to get witnesses because if the witnesses are uninjured, they still work for the employer more than likely, and they often don't want to come in and support a fellow employee against their current employer. So it can be difficult, but none of that is a reason not to pursue a workers' compensation claim. And honestly, if you're working at a place that's going to fire you for having a workers' compensation claim, which is illegal in Virginia, you have to ask yourself whether that's really a place you want to be working anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think the other point is that, some injuries, they don't go away. They could impact you for life. They could affect every aspect of your future. And so to say, I'm worried about this current job that I have right now, not realizing you could be putting everything at risk, is definitely something to think about.
That's exactly right. And what I've learned over the years is that doctors rely on time to heal things. So, an MRI is a very expensive examination. It's about $3,000, but that's really the only way they can see inside the body. So when an NFL player gets hurt, they've got an MRI machine at the stadium because those guys get paid millions and millions of dollars on the line. So they're going to get an MRI right away. But in almost every torn rotator cuff case I've ever had, it was called a sprain at first.
Wow.
So they went to the emergency room. They told them it was a sprain because that's what it seems like. It hurts. It's obviously it's going to hurt because you just injured it. So then it's a matter of time. And then when it doesn't heal with time, typically they then go to physical therapy. And when physical therapy doesn't heal it because it can't heal something that's torn,
right,
they end up getting an MRI. But the health insurance companies are conservative and doctors are conservative, and they're not going to go around running up big bills just because a person has what appears to be a strain. But that shows you why it's so important to get that preliminary record to show that your shoulder was bothering you at the time of the accident, when we discover 3 months later that it's actually a torn rotator cuff that requires surgery. It's key to have that initial record and initial evaluation by a doctor.
Right. So first thing, go to the doctor. Second thing, go to your employer. Once you've done that, step 3.
Step 3 is following through with what the doctor says and making sure what the doctor tells you is clear. Sometimes people go see their doctor after they've been talking to me, and I usually ask them to call me after an update. And I say, well, did he hold you out of work? And they say, well, I don't know. He didn't really talk about that. So the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is once you're in medical care, is you're not entitled to workers' compensation payments unless you're either being held 100% out of work or you're on some sort of reduced or light duty, meaning you can't work to your full capacity, whether it's a physical limitation or whether it's a time limitation. So when you leave the doctor's office, you need to be sure that you have an out of work slip or a work status slip. And usually the doctor will write on a prescription pad, and my clients can just take a picture of it and text it to me. And then we've got it in the file. We file it with the commission on the other side, and we don't have any question or any problem in the future. But if you walk out without that, then we're up in the air. And sometimes we have to reconstruct it after the fact. And the doctor may or may not be comfortable 3 months down the line saying, well, he was able to work this day. He was on light duty this day. So you have to be sure you get that. The other thing,
go ahead.
One more thing before I forget it, that's so important is when you're in physical therapy, it can be difficult because physical therapy can be 2 or 3 times a week. It may not be close to your house. It may be difficult to get transportation, but you have to go. First off, you have to go because your doctor's telling you that's what you need to heal. But second off, if you don't go consistently, if you miss 50% of the appointments or you miss every Friday appointment and you don't even bother to call and there's no excuse noted in the doctor's records, then the insurance company's immediately going to look at that and say, this couldn't have been that bad an injury, and try to turn off your benefits if possible.
And is that something that they are aggressive about, verifying the injury? Because I know there is fraud out there, and I've seen reports of investigations, where they send somebody out to record somebody who was supposed to be bedridden and they're out in front of the house, washing their car or something like that. Is that a concern to think about?
There is real fraud out there. I feel like I'm good enough at weeding out the clients because I don't want to represent somebody who doesn't have a legitimate case, because it affects my credibility, and also it's just a waste of time. But you hit on a good point. You can assume that people are watching you. I tell my clients they may be investigating you, they may not be, but you should always assume that they are. And why is that important? If somebody has a legitimate injury, why is it a big deal that they should be looking out? Because they're not going to be caught with anything, right? Well, I remember a case from years ago where a guy was on workers' compensation. He had a bad back, but he also had a flat tire. So he had to change his tire in the driveway. And they have a video of this guy lifting the wheel off, removing the lug nuts, all that kind of stuff. But what they didn't have a video of is the next 3 days when he couldn't get out of bed. So you have to assume that it's there, but it won't undo a legitimate claim. Okay. Because with a legitimate claim, you're going to have a legitimate injury. And even if you lift a heavy bag to help somebody put a suitcase in the car or take out heavy trash or cut your grass or something, that doesn't mean that you can work 8 hours a day at the hard kind of work that you were doing beforehand.
Right. That makes perfect sense. But bottom line, do what the doctor says. Rehab the way the doctor wants you to rehab. If not, that could affect your case down the road.
It will. And it will affect your credibility with the doctor. It will affect your credibility with the physical therapist. When you go back to the doctor after 30 days, he's going to say, why'd you miss 50% of these appointments? It must not be bothering you that much, or you're not following my instructions seriously. And so he's not going to be willing to hold you out of work because he may or may not believe exactly what you're telling him.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And not to mention, you're supposed to do those things to heal correctly. So if you're not following those instructions, you could be prolonging that injury, or you could add another injury to it, because when you start favoring other parts of your body and those types of things, you run the risk of making it even worse.
That's exactly right. The insurance company can try to cut off your benefits by saying that you're not following the care of the authorized physician. And they have a right to do that. It makes sense. You can't just go out and then say, all right, I just want to keep getting paychecks, but I'm not going to take any steps to get better. You're not allowed to do that, and it makes sense that you're not allowed to do that. So you're 100% right.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm curious, when in this process do I call you? What are some of the factors where I say, I'm not going to work directly with them. I need Chris involved to help me with this process?
Well, the first thing I always say is it's a free consultation. Why wouldn't you call? What's the point of not calling? It doesn't cost you anything. At the very least, I'm going to give you some advice that may help you and give you some insight into your case. Even if you don't choose me or don't choose to go with any lawyer, I'm happy to talk to you. The other thing that's a really big deal is I would say 70 to 80% of the people who come in to see me who have done what you're talking about, chosen to go it on their own. Maybe they give me a call after a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. Sometimes it's a year. And they say, hey, I'm on workers' compensation. I just had a guy say this to me 3 weeks ago. I'm on workers' comp. I say, okay, my first question is, so are you getting workers' comp payments? No, I'm not getting any payments, but they're paying my medical bills.
Okay.
So the confusion is, there is a Virginia state agency called the Workers' Compensation Commission. And unless you have filed an application with them, you are not on workers' compensation.
Okay.
What you are doing is you're dealing with the workers' compensation insurance company for your employer. But a lot of people don't know the distinction. And a lot of people think they're on workers' comp. But the problem is, when you're dealing with the insurance company, you're only taking what they're choosing to give you. You don't have any rights to enforce it. And if they change their mind, they just change their mind, and they don't have to cover anything they don't want to cover. And you don't have any mechanism to force them to cover it, because that's what the commission is there for. So once you go to the commission, if they agree to the case, then you'll have what's called an award order. And an award order, it will be the same as if you had won the case by going to a hearing. And once you have an award order, then you're protected. then you have all the rights that come from the Virginia Workers' Compensation Act, including lifetime medical benefits for anything that relates to the accident, as well as pay benefits for the time that you're out. But until you do that, you're only dealing with the insurance company, and you're at their mercy, and you're only getting what they tell you deserve, not necessarily what you deserve under the law.
Well, that is such an important story, because this was somebody who said, I'm on workers' comp, and they don't know workers' comp. They don't know any of the things that you just talked about. So they could just go along the whole time thinking this is what workers' comp is. This is what they give me. And they could be missing out on all of these important benefits. And I think that's something that we keep going back to, Chris, every time is we don't know how these things work. You've said it before. You're not a doctor, so don't assess your own medical care. Well, you're not an attorney, so don't assume that you know everything about how workers' compensation works.
That's exactly right. And the other thing that you have to do is you have to remember that the person that you're dealing with from the workers' comp insurance company is not your friend. They're not your advocate. They're not your ally. They are simply a representative of the insurance company. And that recent example is a perfect example. That client was entitled to get paid for the time that he was out of work.
Right.
And although he thought he was on workers' comp, the only thing he was getting his medical bills paid. And so he calls me after 4 weeks when he hasn't gotten any pay, hasn't been able to work, doesn't know what to do, but he thinks, well, that's all I get. That's what they told me I get. So don't take that. There's no reason to take that when lawyers are out here offering free consultations so we can give you our advice. Just call.
Yeah, get that free advice. When you're working on a workers' compensation claim, are you working directly with the workers' comp? Do you have any interaction with the employer? Because that's another thing where I'm thinking, I don't want my employer to know I've hired an attorney and I'm doing all of these things. How does that look?
The employer, I will not deal with at all. The employer is represented by the insurance company or by the insurance company's attorney, just the same way I represent my client. And once I'm involved, the insurance company is not supposed to talk to my client, and I'm not supposed to talk to the employer. So unless they reach out to me and I get the permission of the insurance company, I wouldn't talk to the employer. But you bring up a good point. The employer is going to know that you filed a workers' comp case.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation. And you have to decide, again, is it worth working for a company where you're worried about using their insurance, which they pay for, which is supposed to be there to protect you as their employee? If they're going to give you a hard time about that, that's not a place that you want to be long term.
Right. You would hope for an employer that's proactive about your health and making sure that your expenses are covered so that you can return back to them in good health and continue to be a great employee moving forward.
That's exactly right. That's what you would hope happens. And in some cases, it doesn't happen. And it's almost a second blow to people who have worked hard and worn their body out for 20 or 25 years, doing hard labor on a regular basis. And then they find out that the employer does not support them, is not helping them, and in fact, maybe trying to thwart their efforts. It's really an unfortunate thing, an unfortunate realization that some of my clients have to come to.
Yeah, I hate to see that. So what are some other things that people need to know in this process as you represent them with their workers' compensation claim?
Well, before we even get to that point, I want to bring up one more point for people who might be thinking that they're going to go without an attorney.
Okay.
And it's important that the Workers' Compensation Act only covers medical payments to authorized treating physicians. So what does that mean? If I get hurt and I just go to my family doctor, they don't have to cover that bill. And they don't necessarily have to hold me out of work for that period of time. What you're supposed to do, and your employer is supposed to volunteer this, but if they don't, you need to ask them for what's called a panel of physicians. And they're supposed to give you a list of 3 physicians, and then you choose one of those physicians and you go to that physician. And then any treatment that physician provides or any referrals that physician makes is in the chain of authorized treatment, so you won't have any issue as to whether or not they're going to pay for your medical benefits. Because if you just go to your doctor and get referred along and don't make it clear that it's workers' compensation, they may turn it down. They may turn down that period of time and send you to their own doctor. So that's another very important thing that people don't know who haven't studied the law or had an accident before.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I've never in my life heard of that. And so in that case, I'm relying 100% on my employer to have all their ducks in a row and to do the right thing. And if they don't, it could threaten my entire claim.
Yes, and usually once you contact the adjuster is gonna do that for you.
Okay.
But let's say you've got one of these things where it didn't feel too bad, you don't really want to report it to your employer, and you get physical therapy through your general practitioner, and you run up $3,000 worth of bills, then it's not going away, and you're concerned about it. They may not cover that. They don't necessarily have to cover that. We can try to get it covered, but it's much cleaner from the outset to go with an authorized treating physician.
So panel of judges from your employer.
That's right. A panel of doctors they'll give you. That's exactly right.
Of doctors, not judges. See, I'm in that attorney mindset. I'm already in court, Chris.
I understand. Hopefully, we're going to get this resolved before you even have to see a judge.
That's right. So I've gone to the panel doctor. I've documented everything. I'm speaking with you. What do you consider to be your primary role in this process?
My primary role in this process is making sure that you're getting what you deserve, that you're getting the treatment that you need. For example, sometimes when you're at your general practitioner and they want to make a referral to an orthopedist, the insurance company could just say, no, we don't think it's necessary. We're not going to pay for that. We're not going to authorize that. So we might have to go to the Workers' Compensation Commission at that point and have the judge order that to be done. Or they try to mess around with your pay. Or they try to challenge the doctor. Sometimes they have what are called nurse case practitioners, and the nurses go to your appointments with you, believe it or not. And they don't have a right to be in the room with you, but if you don't know that you could kick them out, they'll go to every single appointment with you. And they'll sit in there, and then after you have the appointment, they'll talk to the doctor. And they'll say, well, doctor, it seems like maybe he can go back to work. Why don't we try and send him back to work? Right? It happens all the time, believe me. And so first off, no nurse, nobody from the insurance company has a right to be in there when you're talking to your doctor, when you're being examined. They will tell you that they do. They will try to put their foot in the door and go in the room, but you have a right to tell them to wait in the waiting room. Now, of course, they have a right to talk to your doctor and find out what's going on with your case because you're asking the insurance company to pay for your bills and pay for your medical care. So they have a right to that, but they don't have a right to be there with you. And they also don't have a right to do what's called medical management, which is where they suggest things to the doctor. But sometimes it's clear that they're doing that. And if that's the case, you need to get that nurse off the case. And to do that, you need to go to the Workers' Compensation Commission. So that's my role, is just making sure that they're getting exactly the benefits that they should get, that they're getting them on time, they're getting the medical care that they need, and that they're progressing properly.
And when it comes to how you earn your money for providing this service, is it all contingency?
It is all contingency, and we don't get paid unless the case settles.
Okay.
So sometimes people get hurt, and I represent them, and we work, and they go back to work, and the case doesn't settle because they get better and they return to work. And those cases are fine. I don't get paid on those. I don't charge an upfront fee and ask that it be approved by the commission. Some people charge $250 or $500 upfront and ask for an approval of that. I've never done that. It's strictly contingency. If the case settles, I get 20% of the settlement. And the cases that settle are the bigger, more serious cases where the insurance company wants to close the file after a certain period of time. There's some uncertainty about a return to work. And then we start negotiating to try to come up with a number that's satisfactory to both sides.
Wow, it's very interesting. So what else would you like somebody to know who's facing this type of workplace injury?
Make sure that you call somebody. We've already gone over 4 or 5 different traps, different pitfalls, different things that you're not going to know. A friend of mine who works in the insurance industry kind of was teasing me after seeing some of my videos that I'm a little hard on the insurance industry. But my experience is they are your adversary. No matter how friendly they are, no matter how nice they are not there. They are not hired to take care of you. That doesn't mean that there aren't cases where people are well taken care of by the insurance company. I never find out about those cases because they never call me. If everything goes smoothly with the insurance company, you don't have any reason to call an attorney. But is it really going smoothly? Do you even know? Are you trained? Or are you like my recent client who's not getting out of work benefits, not getting paychecks when he was entitled to paychecks? So educate yourself. Watch some videos, do some research, call a lawyer for free consultation so that you don't screw things up and you don't end up getting taken advantage of. You're already injured. You're already in a bad way. You're getting behind. You're feeling bad. You're healing. You're not in the best place you've ever been in. So go to a professional for guidance. Don't try to go it on your own. It's much too serious.
Well, and I have to tell you, I've run businesses before. I've been an employee. I've done all of those things. I thought I understood a little bit about workers' compensation, and you've made me realize I don't know anything. And I would fall into every one of the traps that you talked about, not knowing what was going on. That's how ignorant I realize that I am in this situation.
Well, it's easy to do, and none of us know about situations until we get into them.
Yeah.
You don't know how to be a parent until you have kids. It just doesn't even occur to you. So when something like this comes up, just like you would go to a doctor when you get hurt, when you have legal rights, there's no reason not to call a lawyer for a free consultation to talk about it. What's it going to hurt you? It's just going to take a little bit of your time, explain your situation. There have been plenty of people I've talked to who didn't hire me, but I pointed them in the right direction. Sometimes I say you don't need a lawyer. Everything seems fine. If a problem arises, give me a call back later. Sometimes people have a minor situation, and I say, look, make sure you report it to your employer. Make sure that you go to the authorized physician from the panel, and make sure that you get out of work slips every time you see your doctor. And if you don't want to hire me or hire anybody, you want to go it on your own, at least know those things. Take advantage of the resources that are out there. A lawyer offering a free consultation is a great resource, and there's no reason not to take the time, take your health seriously, take your future seriously, and give me a call.
Well, and I feel like even if they call you, like you said, sometimes you tell them you're being treated fine, you don't need an attorney. That's peace of mind right there. That's worth money, in my opinion.
I think it is, and we can go through quickly, make sure, okay, have you got this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you got this? Are you actually filed with the state agency? I would tell you 75% of my clients aren't. And if you don't file within 2 years, your case is going to be over with. And people don't know that. People think they've on workers' comp because they're just dealing with the insurance company.
Wow, it really is remarkable. That's why I love these podcasts that you're doing, Chris, because anyone who's watched this, they will be so empowered to check off those boxes and to seek help when they need it. So I really appreciate this service that you're providing. I think it's amazing.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to get the information out there and happy to help anybody that I can.
All right, fantastic. This has been another edition of the Booberglawcast. Contact Chris if you have any questions. You can tell just by talking to him. He's there to help you out. He won't charge you anything for the consultation. And if you are ever in a workplace injury, please go back and watch this and look at those steps and seek outside help. You're not an expert. I'm not an expert. Go to the experts for that help. Join us next time on another edition of the Booberglawcast.
Thanks, Jay.
Oh, thank you, Chris.